All right, take three. I must be out of practice. I've been gone for a while. Quite a while, actually. And I've been on a personal journey on, I guess, discovering value and what that means in the terms of relationships, both, romantic and platonic, and also in terms of what that means to ourselves. And if you don't know your values, I think you'll spend your life guessing until you figure out what is valuable. And the problem or the challenge behind that is that we're all taught to value certain things. And I guess we can call it like a social idealism or any type of idealism, actually. And so we try to live according to certain idealisms, even the ones that we fantasize and make up in our own heads. And that might actually conflict with our own actual personal values. So we attempt to live in different ways in other people's value systems, or, live according to what other people think based on what we were taught to believe is most important. But we always know, and we always feel, even though we may not be aware, that we're getting a bunch of resistance in our life. And the resistance, I think, is to keep us authentic and within our value system. So if this video goes on a little bit too long, well, I guess you're just going to have to take a break, pack a lunch, and continue, because there's a lot coming in this one. And I will try my best not to rehash too many times in a row. Having said that, relationships, which seem to be my spiritual quest, a lot of people go to another country and try to spread the gospel or a religious message of some sort and get trial by fire type of deal. I've learned that my spiritual quest is relationships. I thought I had a value on relationships, but the relationship is a means to an end for me. And I finally have come to the terms. I finally realized that my attraction and so-called pursuit of relationships is mainly due to the values that are being fulfilled or brought to the surface through the experiences that I have in relationships. And so I've been doing, this value research for a long time, and I haven't really quite clarified it up until today. And that's due to the recent amount of challenge that I've experienced. And it has not been easy, of course, to challenge. And I never wish for things to be easier. I just wish for me to become stronger, to become better, to be more aware, and to grow from that. And so it's been, heartbreaking and defeating, or I've had those feelings, but here I am still trucking on my spiritual quest known as romantic relationships. And so now that I've come to terms with that, what I think is most beneficial in living your life is knowing what you value and being clear about it. Because if you don't know what you value, you don't really know what's important to you. And if you don't know what's important to you, even when you're getting it, if you're not aware of it, you could take it for granted. You don't see how it's serving you. You don't see how it's fulfilling you. And whatever we're ungrateful for, we lose, give away, or basically push away. We give it up. We get rid of it somehow, And so, having said that, I've been doing my best to figure out what the people in my life value, even if they don't know. And you can't always, or I haven't been able to, identify what's most important to people based on how they live. Because most people, if not all, I'm still learning this stuff, when you're living your life, you are living according to your values. It's just a matter of the means of the expression of fulfilling that value. So it becomes sort of like a metaphorical puzzle. And you have to see the means for the ends and the ends for the means. And so another thing is that there are high values that are like maybe the top 3 or so would be your self-actualized life. That's like, your destiny or whatever. Given the amount of distress and depression and conflict and things of that nature that all of us are walking around with, is an indication that the highest values are not being met, or they're being met but they're not being recognized and in the form that they're in. And I realized this last night during my meditation in a way that made it extremely clear. And it's funny because it came in the form of a relationship challenge, which put me in a situation to find exactly what it is that has got me kinked for so long. And so the key now, from what I see, is once you know your values, you kind of either have to be super clever and smart and at least caring enough to find out what the other person values if they haven't clarified it, and try to bring that value to them in the terms of the relationship, if that's what it is. Because that's how we connect, and that's how we interface. We interface through our value systems. And if we don't find that we have value in meeting someone or being with someone, or a value in an experience, then chances are we're not going to want to repeat that experience. And as shallow as it sounds, it's kind of a lot like sales. If you don't have what somebody feels they need, they're probably not going to want you. And that sounds brutal, but at least that's sort of the experience that I've had, is that if people aren't bringing to you what you feel is missing, then you really don't have a need for them. And that's a hard reality, I think. And so in a romantic relationship, having both people communicate their want to be together while helping each other fulfill their needs increases value on the relationship, and then both people feel fulfilled. Because if you have a value, what you find most important, what you value most, is often what you perceive to be most missing. So you might not value food up until you're hungry. You might not value money up until you're poor. You might not value empathy until you have none. So what you find or believe to be missing most is often what you value. Your voids drive your values. I've heard that. And so if the relationship is not filling certain voids with the associated values, the complementary values, then it's going to burn out, because the void is going to come in the form of a challenge, and too much challenge will burn you out, and too much support will bore you. If you get everything you value, it's going to be too easy. You're going to get bored, and then you're going to look for the next challenge, because we grow through challenge, and we are wired to seek challenges. And even if we aren't, I am, so I know that. I love a great challenge, because I know that every challenge has a reward. And if we're willing to do, or at least attempt, what seems impossible, the value in that is equally as I don't even have a word for it. Equally as magnificent, same magnitude, same amplitude. Let's talk about frequency. But yeah, and so having gone through what I've gone through these past weeks or so, I've seen a lot of growth, a lot of change, a lot of things have been brought to my awareness. And so, for example, I believe caring, the actual what it means to care, doesn't necessarily mean to have just empathy or just this, or it's not just a certain form. Caring is like an action to me. And caring is, how I see it, is in the means to find out what the other person needs and be willing to assist them in fulfilling those needs. So if we think beyond the physical items, like needing to feel appreciated by receiving gifts, or needing to feel loved by a hug, or needing to feel attractive through sexual pursuits. If you get rid of the means to the end and just look at the void and the value, then you can be infinitely creative on how to cultivate a relationship through the many different avenues of fulfilling a certain value. And if you care about someone, I think you actually take notice of what it is that they're communicating when they feel, a sense of challenge or conflict. The first question I think that should pop up in our heads is, what's the need right now? what value is not being fulfilled? What's the void? And if I have the ability to assist in this, how can I do so? And that to me, I think is like a core component of relationships and caring or caringness. And so if someone needs to be recognized, then when they do something that they're trying to be recognized for, give them some honest recognition, you know, and that's speaking from personal experience. And here's another thing. I have to skip forward because I don't want to ramble too long. But another example is that in a relationship, this is probably going to like cause a little bit of a stir up. I hope so. But if you're not willing to take note and care enough to communicate your values and their values through an empathetic system, then you have to care enough about the person to let them outsource their value from the relationship. And that is a big one. So for example, if I am with someone who doesn't value communication, then when I feel the need to talk and they don't want to fulfill that value and communicate, then they must be willing to allow me to go communicate with someone else to fulfill that value, that void, without punishment, judgment, or criticism. And that's a tough one, because even I'm like, whoa, you know, if you're not going to fulfill yourself with me, then suddenly my insecurities pop up. And I'm like, oh, I've sensed that I'm not fulfilling a value, so now I feel devalued or even at less value, and I start to feel maybe a little threatened by the outsourcing. So I'm learning that as well. But I saw it, you know, this past week or so, 2 weeks, that now that my values have come to the surface and a little bit more clarity, I can see why I do what I do. I can see why I think what I think, and I can see why I've chosen the certain types of people in my life to be there, and I can see why I keep them as well. And everyone else is telling me that, you know, I choose the wrong people for me, but at the same time, everyone tells me that I'm on to something good and that I'm going to be, you know, great. And I get a lot of recognition. It's nice. And I get a lot of encouragement. But I don't think people have quite connected the fact that the reason why I've become what I have is because of the people that I've chosen to keep and what values are being fulfilled by those choices. And so people say, you know, that's an unhealthy person to be around. I wouldn't judge anyone as, you know, any person as unhealthy. Just because you're around them doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to, you know, take on their habits or believe what they say or make the same choices. Because there's value in making peace with the so-called unwanted unhealthy. There's value in connecting and showing empathy to what you might not agree with. There's value with communicating with people that maybe the reason why they are unhealthy is because they don't have the tools or they haven't learned yet how to make healthy choices. And if I have, then I need to be with people that are unhealthy if I would like to share my experience in hopes that maybe if they want sort of the same outlook and relief that I've had in my life, then I have to be the one to bring it to them. It's like bringing peace to war makers. Maybe if a war maker has never known peace and they've never seen it, they need someone who's not afraid to get into the war peacefully and teach people how to live that way. Like a spiritual quest, like I was saying, you know. And so in that sense, it's the real challenge, and I think it's not just relationships, I think it's almost all human interaction, is that we're not, you know, unvaluable, is that a word? We're not valueless, and we're all worth it. The it is up to us to decide what that, you know, could be, what that could mean for us. We're all here to bring value to each other's lives, to, you know, thrive rather than just survive. And so if you know that you know what your actual needs are, and by the way, having needs does not make you needy. I think we get that cross-wired as well. Being needy just means that you have a lot of voids, and once you fill those voids through finding out what they are, you'll eventually get through the lower values, and then you'll start finding out what your highest values are. And when you start living and working on those highest values, once your value goes up, your sense of self-worth goes up, and your tolerance for what you might deem devaluing will go down, but your empathy for it will go up. It's like this big balancing, act thing that keeps us always in equilibrium. And so, having said that, I've discovered quite a bit, and I have a little bit of heartache, I guess, because I see why I do what I do. And I know that sounds like I've done something wrong, maybe, in my tone of voice, but no, I haven't done anything wrong. I see what I do and why I do it and what values that fulfills. And I'm really trying to learn what other people need and what they value as well, so that I can bring value to their life. And the challenges that we experience along the way are only to bring us to greater levels of awareness and understanding. So we don't have to see them as problems. We don't have to see it as conflict. We don't have to see it as not working. It's working beautifully. It's love. Love is both sides. It's a synchronicity of complementary opposites. And so it's neither good or bad or right or wrong. It's just a dark spot that you have no awareness of that is coming into awareness. But it only comes through challenge, while support makes it expand, I guess you could say, horizontally. And challenge makes it contract. When you have those so-called opposing forces happening at once, that balance, then it grows up. It comes into awareness. It's like a blossoming of consciousness. And so, coffee. So having said that, and I'm on my 16-minute mark, so I've done pretty well. I encourage everyone to step back from their challenges, and instead of labeling them as problems or things that aren't working, find the value in it and how it is serving you and how it is working. I had a long talk with a friend of mine who has had a lot of pain, in her life, and we talked for hours, and we went through all the way down to the inner child, all the way back up to the present, and you could see it in her face when the pain was coming through. And then you could see the healing happening, because as we went back through the challenges and found the value in how her negativity in the past has served her presently and has brought her to the state of living and a fulfilling life, it went from anger to acceptance to peace. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes, because what we get angry about is not actually anger. Anger is the symptom. The cause is a value being challenged, a value not being met. So I've learned that when I get angry, I'm not actually angry. What I'm really saying is I'm not getting what I need. And that's okay. It's okay to be angry, not getting what you need, but it's not okay to only be angry. You have to, I would say, recognize why it is you feel the anger and what need is not being met, and then how to communicate the need for that need in a way that you and whoever has challenged your value can exchange value. And so I realized that any negativity that I experience in my life is an indication of a void not being met or a value being challenged. So there's no sense of getting angry. It's an emotional cue to go, whoa, okay, what am I missing here? That's it. Doesn't mean I'm never going to be angry again, but it does mean that at least I know how to question my own emotions to find out exactly what the key is to unlocking the next step in gratitude. So if you're out enjoying yourself and your boyfriend or girlfriend is blowing up your phone and you start getting annoyed or angry, maybe you have a value on freedom, and maybe that value in freedom is being challenged because you're basically being a slave to your phone, waiting for the next message and trying to close the conversation so that you can go about exercising your freedom. But if you only think that way, you'll become self-righteous, because maybe if you think about only your freedom and think that value is being challenged, and you don't think about what need or void isn't being met on the other end of the conversation, then you could consider that being pretty self-righteous, you know? So maybe your freedom value is challenging the other person's security value. And so what they're looking for is some security, and you're looking for freedom, and you being away is challenging their security, and their insecurity is challenging your freedom. So now you're arguing over nothing, basically. You have a conflict. So in order to resolve that conflict, both parties have to participate in a solution or a conversation or some sort of resolution of how can I bring you security in exchange for exercising my freedom? And how can you give me that freedom in exchange for your security? Because insecurity is insecurity. If you're insecure, you're insecure. That's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing bad about being insecure. We all have, different degrees of insecurity, and some people have if you have a high value on security, you probably have a pretty delicate insecurities, as a matter of fact. Probably. I don't know. So basically, you have a value for freedom, they have a value for security, and now you have two what seems to be conflicting, challenging values. So I'm going to wrap this up with only 5 minutes left. Find out what the other person values, care enough to contribute to those values, and do that for each other. And I'm willing to bet that at least some things will smooth out, because I've seen it now, and now I understand. So thank you for recognizing me, because that's a value of mine, recognition. And thank you for giving me the freedom of speech to say what I want. And thank you for allowing me to be creative and expressive. And thank you for connecting and showing me a little bit of empathy. So until next time, I must embark on the next spiritual adventure.